Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Commission's public forum on our draft decision for Goulburn Valley Water. For those that don't know me, my name is Satish Bojani and I'm one of the commissioners at the Essential Services Commission. Just to let you know that this forum is being recorded to ensure access for those who are unable to attend today. Any statement, comment you make will be included in the recording, which we plan to make available on our website. For that, I acknowledge the traditional owners of all the lands for today's forum. In particular, I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and waters of the service area of Goulburn Valley Water. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and I extend that respect to all Aboriginal people who may be here today. Thank you all for making the time to come together this afternoon for this forum. I'd like to introduce some staff from the Commission who are with us here today. On my left is Dean Wickinton, Senior Regulatory Manager of Price Monitoring Branch. Most of you will probably know Dean. We also have some other members of our water team and other teams from the Commission here. Lucy Weston, Shauna March. Behind me we have Nitul Deshpande. From Goulburn Valley Water, I would like to welcome Steve Cagle, Managing Director, and Sarah Thompson, General Manager. We also have some board members of the board, I think, who may be here. In particular, I think Tammy Atkins, Dennis Flatt, Christine Cusson.
Yeah, I'm on the screen. Thank you.
And Hayley Tudor-Harrop. You may also be online, I understand.
I am.
Yeah, you're to turn the camera on, Hayley, if you'd like to, and just give us a wave. That'd be great. If not, that's fine as well. Hello, Hayley. Thank you. And we have a number of other staff members of Goulburn Valley Water. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for making the time to be here today. I'd also like to thank all the people online or here in person for making the time to join us today. Before we get to the agenda, some quick housekeeping. If you have any questions, as you can see, it's a hybrid forum. If you have any questions while someone is talking, please type them into the chat so we can build them into the conversation. If you're online, please keep the microphone muted when not speaking to avoid feedback and background noise. In addition to your participation today, you can also provide written feedback via the Engage Victoria website. And please do let us know if there is another preferred option of how we engage with you, because we are always open to feedback and we really value that opportunity to engage with you. The web address for Engage Victoria will be presented as we go through the slides. Okay, so the purpose and agenda for today, let me get that into context. I'll use the first part of today's forum to give you a brief introduction on our role in price regulation. But as always, the main purpose of this event is to hear from you and answer any questions you might have on our draft decision. To help shape today's discussion, we'll cover how we assessed Goulburn Valley Water's price submission and our draft decision, then invite Goulburn Valley Water with an opportunity to respond to our draft decision, and then we'll have an opportunity to hear from all of you through questions and comments. We appreciate being able to have an open and honest conversation with you today, and insights from these engagements are really important and help us shape our decisions to finality. It is only a draft decision. So let's start with the Commission. We regulate Victoria's energy, water and transport sectors and oversee the Fair Go rate system. We also administer the Victorian Energy Upgrades Program. For the water sector, we approve prices and service standards, monitor and report on performance, and administer customer service codes. We are currently reviewing water prices to apply from the 1st of July 2023 for 14 water businesses. The prices we approve reflect an assessment of the efficient costs water businesses need to recover to provide the valued services to your customers. Now, following consultation, we issue a determination that sets the maximum price that Goulburn Valley Water may charge customers. Turning to how we assess the price submission and draft decision, I'd like to now invite Dean to step us through how we assess that price submission and our draft decision. Welcome, Dean.
Thanks, Satish. Good to see everyone here this afternoon in the room and also online. Hopefully you can hear okay. If you can't, I think just put it in the chat and we'll do it. As Satish mentioned, I'll take you through just probably a high-level overview of how we assess Goulburn Valley Water's price submission and the key elements of our draft decision. I think Steve and Sarah will touch on some of the detail behind the submission itself a bit later on, so I'll touch on a few things, but probably the main thing is focusing on our assessment and our process that we went through. Just some important context. We are the state's independent economic regulator. We don't have unfettered powers. We are constrained by certain rules, like most people. We assess role is really set out in something called the Water Industry Regulatory Order. That is an instrument issued by government which applies to us. It sets out the things that we need to have regard to in assessing a price submission. A lot of those around efficiency and things like that, and also the processes that we need to go through as well. That, you can see the bottom dot point on the slide there. The WIRO itself also links back to objectives in the Essential Services Commission Act, which is our umbrella piece of legislation, and also the Water Industry Act 1994. All up, I think there's 20 odd different objectives that we need to think about when we do a price review. The guidance that we issue guidance to water businesses in advance of them lodging submissions with it. That sort of drops down a bit more detail. It feeds off the Water Industry Regulatory Order, drops down a bit more detail into the specific things that we need to see in a price submission in order to be able to assess it against the Water Industry Regulatory Order. So what we want to see in terms of information also sets out things like our expectations around engagement, contains engagement principles and things like that. The Primo framework, so the guidance also sets out the Primo expectations that we first started in 2018 at that price review, and it's continued on since then. That is an incentive framework for water businesses, and what we're trying to do through that framework in the end is make sure a business has incentive to put forward its best offer to its customers. Also underpinned by an expectation that businesses engage really well with their customers to inform their submissions too. Next slide. In terms of Goulburn Valley Water's price review process, under the Water Industry Regulatory Order framework, it is a proposed respond model. So it is a model whereby we don't come up with prices on our own. The business really leads the dance, if you like, and puts forward its proposal, and we assess that against the Water Industry Regulatory Order, our guidance, and also relevant legislation. The draft decision, it is a procedural thing, but it is important. Satish alluded to this earlier. It's a chance for us to test our views with Goulburn Valley Water and also other stakeholders before we land a final decision. I think that's a critical part of the process, as well as today and the submissions that we'll receive up to the 12th of May, I think. The draft decision itself indicates what we propose to approve and propose to not approve. So it is our indicative view. And as I said, it's a chance to get more feedback before we lock in our price determination. Thanks. This probably summarises just what I've gone through a bit, but we're at the red arrow there. It's getting close to the 12th of May when submissions close on our draft decision, which we put out on the 12th of April. We'll make a final decision in June. I suspect that'll be mid-June, and prices are being placed from the 1st of July this year. So Current prices will expire and they'll be replaced by new ones that will set through this process. That'll be for a 5-year period under Goulburn Valley Water's proposal, so a fair length of time there. What we do in terms of a review, so assessing price submissions, we look at the engagement that Goulburn Valley Waters has undertaken. As I said earlier, a big focus in the framework is on engagement by water business with their customers to find out what they value most, their priorities and concerns. Seeing how a water business has used that feedback. So it's an important thing that we look for to say, how has a business weighed what it's heard for its customers in packaging up its proposals for us to consider. Testing the expenditure and demand forecast. So engagement, you find out a lot about what customers value most, so what outcomes they want. Expenditure forecasts and, to a lesser extent, demand usually drive the price that's calculated to deliver those outcomes. So we do spend a lot of time working through the expenditure proposals put forward by a water business, and we do get help from external consultants to do that as well, as noted on the bottom of the slide, who look at things like capital and operating cost justifications. Verifying the supporting assumptions and data, so looking to test that good sources of information have been used, latest pieces of information have informed a submission, things like on input costs and things like that. Has reasonable information being used to underpin the proposals coming through. Evaluating how businesses, Goulburn Valley Waters, manage risk and performance. So we look at how a business performed through the current period. Did it deliver what it said it would for customers? And how it's managed risk on behalf of customers. So risks like managing the impacts of climate change and adapting to climate change. And there are other things like managing demand risk for customers through like a price cap where a business accepts the risk, and that's what Goulburn Valley Water's done. And just, I've already mentioned operating capital expenditure costings, and above we do test the overall prudency and efficiency of those. So prudency in terms of the outcome that's sought is one aspect of that. So whether it be regulatory obligations or catering for growth or catering for customer, what customers value in terms of the services that form part of that. The flip side of that, or the other side of that, is also testing the efficiency of the costs that underpin the delivery of those outcomes, and that's where a lot of our time is spent in review. One thing about capital expenditure, we do have focused a bit this time on deliverability of programs across the sector. We've seen a pickup in capital expenditure, I guess, plans. There's a bit of volume related stuff happening, but also input costs as well are affecting forecasts put forward by businesses. Thank you. Next slide. In terms of Goulburn Valley Water's proposal and a summary of our draft decision, we accept the 5-year period put forward by Goulburn Valley Water and a number of elements of the price submission, things like demand forecast, the high-level outcomes that are being sought, the approach to tariff structures, the mix of fixed and variable charges isn't changing, and also the form of price control largely, so that's under a price cap, as I mentioned earlier. Our revenue requirement that we've adopted of about 420 million, I think, is about 5% lower than put forward by the business, and I think it's fair to say we've challenged the business on things around its expenditure forecasts. One it's not on the slide there, but probably one of the key ones is around the customer, what you term the value for money, customer willingness to pay projects, which had 3 sort of arches around regional leadership, local benefits of carbon emissions, and also supporting customers in need. So I don't think we're challenging the need or the high level objectives of those are being sought. We've allowed the funding for the customers in need side of things, so we recognise the affordability issues facing many in the community and the increases in real prices proposed. The other 2, we're just looking for more information from the business, though, to justify the outcomes that are sought there. So it's specifics around the targets that you're trying to reach, and then the costing that sort of underpin that. So we've challenged the business on that, and that accounts for a bit of that reduction in the revenue requirement. Other things, we've skipped forward a slide. That's all right. looking at new customer contributions. So we are looking for further information how the business has allocated growth capital expenditure, new customer contributions. Is that reasonable? Confirming the approach to digital meters. So we've challenged the business again in our draft decision to provide more detail on the benefits of that for customers, given it's a doubling in the tariff for those connections from the others. So that's another aspect of our draft decision as well. And like most businesses through this process, one of the things we have done is, again, high inflation environment. The inflation number that was released last week was 7%. That'll get passed through to customer bills in the year that's coming. So that does add another overlay around affordability, and asked Goulburn Valley Water to come back on some thinking around how it proposes to manage that on top of the things you've already done around affordability. So I know you've considered that already. Next slide, thanks. This table here shows gives Goulburn Valley Water's proposal in the price submission. So this shows different bill estimates for high-level customer groups, so residential owner-occupiers and tenants, and some non-residential customers as well. Current bill is around $890 for water and sewerage. For a residential owner-occupier in real terms, before inflation under the proposal, that comes out at around $917. And just the bottom note on the slide there, once you add the 7% inflation outcome, that makes that bill for 23 for around $980. So that's the quantum of change that the customers actually see on their bill coming through. So I think that's part of the reason that we're asking a bit more information around the inflation aspect of the proposals. Next. This summarises our proposed adjustments to the operating and capital expenditure forecasts. So operating expenditure, I mentioned the willingness to pay projects. Again, we've challenged the business around its productivity hurdle around that. It was put forward an average of 0.4% per annum, and in our draft decision, we proposed 1% per annum. We do have objectives under our headline legislation and regulations to promote efficiency improvements. On the capital expenditure side, I think that was mainly around the office and the uncertainty around the final arrangements for how that would be funded, whether it be lease or capital funded. And I think you're working on more clarity around that in response to the draft. This slide shows the trend in capital expenditure over the current period and the forecast period over which prices will be set. So from the 1st of July. I think the key thing here is, I could summarise it without going too much detail on the chart, is the business has performed pretty well on the capital expenditure delivery. I suppose that's one thing we noticed with the business. It has managed its CapEx delivery quite well in terms of what's being delivered in terms of commitments, but also how close they are to the benchmarks that we established. You can see the green line there shows the pickup in forward capital expenditure. I think that's a 35% increase or thereabouts over the full period, and some of the solar projects. The key project, I think, is the solar one. So the office was in there too. FTI Consulting helped us go through the capital side of things. So one thing we focused on was the deliverability of that program with Goulburn Valley Water, but also other businesses as well. And they had strong confidence in the ability and capacity of the business to deliver that. Next slide. Operating costs is the next slide. That one shows, I think, probably the key story here is that in the current period, if it's sort of more the left-hand side of the chart here, the lighter blue compared to the dark blue, costs have been higher in the current period than what was embedded into customer prices in the. So I think there's a number of things happening there. Across the sector, we've seen increased cost pressures. Goulburn Valley Water is probably slightly above average, but it's not a big outlier on the differential between how operating costs turned out relative to what was forecast 5 years ago. Going forward, you see an uptick in operating expenditure there. As I mentioned earlier, we've put forward a couple of things we'd like the business to think about in its response in terms of that profile going forward. Thanks, Fiona. You mentioned Primo earlier. Under Primo, there's a rating system, and this is part of the incentive framework. So under Primo, you can be leading, advanced, standard, or basic. Our draft decision proposed a standard primo price submission rating. I mentioned earlier that the business generally met its expectations for delivery on commitments in the current period. A good engagement program. I think you hit 5% of your customer base or thereabouts, maybe a little bit more over that period. And you did a range of things, surveys, forums, delivery processes, things like that. So that was good. And we did challenge all businesses to focus on the inclusivity and diversity of their engagement. We're very comfortable that Goulburn Valley Water's followed that, including its partnership work with traditional owners and Indigenous Australians. Proposed outcome measures. So I think generally they were tested strongly with through your engagement program, and we're comfortable they have taken into account customer views. I know there's so many things that come up during those processes, but you seem to have captured those well overall. We considered there's a standard level of risk acceptance in terms of what the business put forward. I think it's fair to say the business put forward what it considered was an advanced submission, and we have proposed a standard rating, which is a notch lower. I should say the key thing with this is I think standard does equate to good value being received by customers. So that's the starting point. So that was our assessment. I guess we just didn't see the step change in value that customers were getting to justify an advanced rating overall. One of the key things we pointed out in our draft decision is the efficiency hurdle side of that. Which the proposed 0.4% was quite low compared to other businesses and historically as well. That's within the context of a business has low bills already and has challenged itself in the past on efficiency targets. So we're well aware of that too. I think that's me, Satish. Do you going to?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Dean. I'd like to now invite Steve and Sarah to present on behalf of Goulburn Valley Water in response to the draft decision. Let's see if we can get you onto the screen as well. So you're currently hidden, so we might be able to shift the camera. That's it. Perfect. You get the microphone to you as well.
Very good. Thanks, Satish. Thank you, Dean. And just first of all, I'd like to welcome you to the lovely Goulburn Valley. Thanks so much for coming up to you and your team. It's a pleasure to have you here, as well as our customers and stakeholders that are either in the room with us here today or online. Next slide. I too would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians and the meaning of place, and in doing so recognise the lands of the Yorta people on which we are having our meeting today. As we share our knowledge and passion for water, may we also pay respects to the elders past and present, as it's their knowledge and experiences that holds the key to success of future generations. And for those of you that may not know, these wonderful murals adorn our building down in Fryer Street at the head office. Left-hand side there, that's Margaret Tucker, and the right-hand side is Manny Nora Charles, who are both very esteemed and proud Yorta elders. And as you mentioned, Satish, our service area does extend quite a way south, which incorporates some Taungurung land. So I'd like to acknowledge the Taungurung peoples as well. Next slide. Just before I talk about our organisation and the price submission, I'd really like to thank the Essential Services Commission for the work that we've done together over the last period, and particularly the work that you've done in helping us to get to this point where we are today. At GVW, we've been very ambitious with this price submission, ambitious for our customers to be able to provide the maximum amount of value that we can over the next 5 years. So I do acknowledge and I appreciate all of the effort and input of the ESC and particularly Dean and Marcus as well as Chris. And I see that Chris is online.
Yes.
We've gone blank.
He was online.
Right.
Thanks, Chris. What did you do?
Chris has got power. Sincerely, and including the feedback that you've just provided the summary of, I think that will mean that by the time we get to the middle of June and the final decision is made, it will be a fantastic outcome for our customers and for the business. So thank you. Just quickly to the next slide in terms of a little bit of context. Many of you will be aware that GVW, we deliver water and wastewater across quite a large area here in northern Victoria, about 135,000 people across 54 towns. We're one of 18 water corporations in the state, all of which are publicly owned and governed by a board of directors. And on that, I'm very pleased to say that there are quite a number of our directors that are here today that you've acknowledged, Sitesh. Our board has been intimately involved with this process since it began 2 years ago in terms of their oversight and governance and good advice and counsel. So it's great that they're here today for what is essentially the last step in the process for us as an organisation. Just a key point on this slide before I move on, whilst we serve about 56,000 residential customers, we also have a large number of business customers, and this is the sort of the interesting duality, I think, of this region and the community in which we operate. The list is there on the right-hand side. I think many will recognise that those organisations are a very important part of the food and agriculture economy here in not just the Goulburn Valley, but Victoria as well. So we're very mindful that this price submission not only provides great value for our households and residential customers, but then also that we are considering the needs of our business customers in terms of reliable and affordable water services, so that they can continue to support the community. Next slide. So in terms of our approach, the foundations for our price submission sort of very much built on customers being at the centre of decision making, and Sarah will talk about that process, provide a summary of that shortly. We heard very clearly from our customers right from the beginning that affordability was really important to them, so we took that as the cornerstone of our price submission, and then set about building a price submission that balanced affordability with affordable, reliable services, making sure that we were looking after our assets and making sure that we were supporting our customers. So I think what we've ended up with has been something that has been able to balance that requirement, notwithstanding that we will continue to sharpen the pencil as you have asked from the ESC. I think onto the next slide there. We've also made sure that our plan caters over the next 5 years for disruptions and uncertainty, and I've just sort of captured a few of those areas where we see disruption. I think probably the last couple of years in particular have shown us that things can come out of nowhere and impact our business and impact our customers, and certainly impact our community. And if I sort of reflect on October last year with the floods that were in this very area that had such a significant impact here, as an organisation, we were very mindful of making sure that we were able to continue to provide water to our customers and manage wastewater services. And so it's big to this plan is a continuing growth of that resilience capability within our organisation. I'll pause there. I'll just hand over to Sarah, and then I'll come back and speak specifically to the elements of the draft decision.
Great. Thank you, Steve. So, thank you. Okay, so we had an extensive engagement with our customers over about 2 years, and even before that we were engaging. It's an ongoing process for us, and we, as I think Dean pointed out, engaged with 3,000 people, so about 4 or 5% of our whole base, which was terrific. We surveys, we had some advisory groups, so a customer advisory group. We had 6 deliberative forums to really get into some of those crunchy things that we were trying to sort through with our customers to understand exactly what it is that they would like from us. 54 communities were engaged. I think nearly every sort of town we had some engagement with, which was great. And we had also focus groups, so one-on-one focus groups of different types of customers that we had. So it was a really broad engagement, and I think it's fantastic that we've actually got some of our customers from customer forums. So thank you so much for coming, and I know there's one online as well, Shirley. So really great. I think it was authentic. I hope the customers felt that it was an authentic kind of engagement, continuing the heartfelt kind of thing that GVW often brings to these things. So I think we also, I'd say our staff got a lot out of the process as well. So it really gives them, that tight contact with our customers, which is very, very helpful. So yeah, we moved through a 5-stage process. Suffice to say that it was well thought through and methodical, and I think it landed in a really, really good place. Next slide. Our customers actually helped us come up with these words, which is our promises. So we're saying these are our promises to our customers, and this was quite an extensive process to get to these words. So we will supply reliable water and wastewater services customers can trust. We will lead action with our partners to grow the region. That was quite an interesting process with our customers, recognising that actually probably with a transition to net zero, there is a role for the Water Corporation to be active in that space, not a passive player, but a really active player. We will care for the environment and adapt to a future impacted by climate variability. I think Steve pointed out that, we had floods last year. We had drought before that, and a bit of bushfire, weren't too affected by bushfire, but those really have impacted on the organisation, and the teams have done very well to react or adapt to those difficult circumstances. I do want to recognise the ESCs, how helpful they were as we were going through that process, and that very mindful that we had our focus in recovering from flood. So we'd very much like to thank the team about that. So thank you very much. The last one is we will deliver respectful and responsive customer service, balancing affordability and fairness. So, yeah, those are our 4 customer promises. Next slide. So in our pricing submission, we're certainly investing in the future. So next slide. So we are investing $245 million across our patch, and there's priority projects across lots of the different towns in our area. There's also priority projects that go pretty much across the whole patch. So we've got some big solar work that we're doing, water treatment plant works, SCADA we'll be looking at, a range of different sort of areas. We'll also be looking at our digital capacity, so building systems that just allow us to do what we need to do, really. Next slide. So pricing, next slide. GVW is, as Dean said, we are one of the lowest priced per kilolitre in Victoria, indeed in Australia. So 200 kilolitres, we are, even with what we were proposing, which was a small price increase, we actually were still right down the bottom of Water Corporation's prices for customers. So you can see there GVW is 1,062. I think that was real. Yes, it does include, sorry, that's nominal, includes inflation. And the average was 1,262. So you can see that's actually a really significant, we're significantly lower than most other water corporations on that 200 kilolitre bill. All right, next slide. And it's worth pointing out that we did come off, and Dean alluded to this as well, we've come off a negative 2% price path real. So our prices in 2029 at the current rate, 29.30 in real terms, so excluding inflation, will only just be getting back to the 2018-19 prices. So we will be slowly kind of getting back to the real prices we were at 2018-19 in 2029-30. Next slide. So one of the things that we're really, really excited about, and also mindful that it's the cost of living pressures have really hit, and I think will continue to hit in the next little while, even since we did our customer engagement and we did our we submitted our pricing submission. It's become even more important that we make sure that our customers who are doing it hard are looked after. So we've got a range of initiatives that we will be looking to enact with the $2 million that our customers actually set aside for people who are trying to pay their bills but are finding it hard. And the initiatives there give you a little bit of an idea of the kinds of things that we will be using that $2 million for. So water efficiency partnerships, leak repairs, monthly billing, which allows people to sort of pay more regularly. It's easier for them. Supporting our youth so that they can also be part of, can actually pay their bills, and also helping new arrivals. That's the kind of thing that we're thinking about at the moment, but you'll see more of that in our response to the draft decision. Okay, next slide. And our response to the ESC's draft decision, as Steve said, I think, it's going to be better, our submission, for the fact that you guys have run your eyes over it, your eagle eyes. So we will certainly be reviewing that efficiency hurdle. We'll be restriking the price path based on that, so the prices will come down. We're having a really good look at how we might respond to inflation to help our customers. It could be a smoothing of some sort, could be nominal, could be, we're not quite sure exactly. We've got to do some modelling on that, but we are consciously looking at that. And we'll be giving a bit more information about the customer engagement process so that you can feel comfortable that they are prudent and efficient, and that our customers are engaged in the process of. So it's meant to be a co-investment with our customers.
Yes. And
we want them to be involved in how those investments roll out. And we'll certainly be bringing the ESC in on making sure that does meet your requirements as well. There's other bits and bobs in the draft decision that we'll be providing further information on. So that's largely it. Back to you, Steve.
Well, that was my slide, Sarah. So round it off.
Well done.
But I guess I'll just say that in terms of the specific items that you've spoken to, Dean, we've been very busy since we've received the draft determination to address those. We will be addressing those, as Sarah has just described. I dare say we'll probably go right up to the 12th to be able to finalise that response. But certainly are looking to take on board a lot of what you've shared. So we'll put our best foot forward on 12th.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Steve and Sarah. Really appreciate your presentation, your response. I think this is an appropriate time now to open up the discussion and hear some views from outside the Commission on anything that has been raised today, or on any other topics or concerns that anyone might have. It really would be great to hear from all of you who are here today, either in person or online. And just a reminder that this is a public forum and it's being recorded. It does mean that any statement or comment you make or question you ask will be included in the recording, which will have some interesting challenges, given that some of it's probably been typed into chats, perhaps, but we'll get over that. But it will be any questions you type into the chat function will be read out along with your name and will be included in the recording. So for those online, please use your raise your hand function, and you will be invited to unmute your microphone, turn on your camera, and say your name and organisation. If you're calling via the phone, please say your name and location prior to speaking. And obviously, anyone here that would like to ask a question or make a comment, the one thing I might invite you to do is, if you do want to do that, please, would you mind joining Sarah and myself here so that we can get you near the microphones, because it's otherwise going to be very difficult for the people online to hear what's being discussed. With that said, are there any questions or issues? Perhaps we might do it in tandem, unless there's something already online that somebody's aware of. If there isn't, then I might start in the room itself. Is there something? And whilst people are thinking, can I also, as Sarah and Steve did, also thank all the members of the public that have chosen. Thank you, sir, and thank you all for, as members of the public who've chosen to come into this forum. Your presence here is really appreciated. In terms of our first question, I think, in fact, it is from a member of the public, if I remember correctly, yes. Your name. Shirley, thank you.
Look, not a problem. Thank you so much. Really very interesting. And mine is not a question so much as a statement. I'm sure Sarah and Steve are very remember that I'm not backward in coming forward, but I think this is a really validating part of the process that we were taken through. I'm Shirley Coonerty. I'm a ratepayer. Was involved in the last round of the deliberation forums, which is incredibly interesting. And having read the response, I just want to call out some really good things that I've just picked up on them. Then, Dan, I think that the fact that you've said that GVW managed their CapEx quite well, to me that speaks to the commitment of GVW to provide real value to the customers, so they're not fluffing their own nest, so to speak. So that sort of really resonated with me then. I acknowledge as well that when we're doing the deliberative forum, when we're coming to the 5 promises, we were very aware that inflation would factor into that. And it was interesting for me to hear that our assumption was 3%, but I think, did we land on 6% perhaps? Was it 5%? So that was something really interesting. And also applying the Primo principles is something that I've really benefited from just learning about then. And that's something that I would, definitely be more aware of. So I think from a becoming engaged, getting on board with GB Water and this process, I've just continued to learn more. So that's my main points. Thank you.
Shirley, hello.
Yes.
Can we take that as a dress rehearsal? Because unfortunately, what happened that you may not be familiar with is that unfortunately the internet connection dropped out just as I introduced you. Oh. And so my apologies. You could, as I say, take that as a dress rehearsal, and if we could please be willing to share your response with us again.
That's fine. I'd be happy just to put it in chat, but I was really just acknowledging what a great process it was for us to come to I'm a ratepayer, so to come to the 5 promises, that it was, the result of the deliberative forum, there was very little dissent or disagreement, but that was a true consensus. So the things I've learned from today, I just want to acknowledge, Dan, that you said to Goulburn Valley Water, you acknowledged that they manage CapEx quite well. And I wanted to call out that, to me, that reflects the fact that GVW invest in their people, so invest in us customers rather than, a whole bunch of CapEx. I mean, CapEx is important. Obviously, capital projects are important, but the money goes to the right place. That was my takeaway from the forums anyway. Wanted to acknowledge as well that we built the assumption of inflation, the impact of inflation into our promises. So I think we all came away understanding that the numbers would change. This has been such a great experience to have visibility of the process. And lastly, for me, just having exposure to the Primo principles, applying that and seeing where we landed as standard and understanding why that happened has just sort of really, it will keep me invested and engaged in the process, I think. So mine was really just an acknowledgement that, you know, there's no surprises here. And I think we stakeholders understand, you know, where you've landed, where the EC has landed on that. That's all I wanted to say. Did you hear it?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shirley. We did
Thank
get it
you.
this time. And thank you. And thank you for your willingness to share with us. And again, once again, thank you so much for your willingness to make the time to be as involved as part of this forum. It's greatly appreciated.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
With that, thank you. With that in mind, we also have another member of the public here with me. And if I could invite you to introduce yourself and make whatever contribution or comment you'd like to make.
My name is Bill Robbins. I've been around in this area for maybe 12 years. Just over a year and a half ago, I moved from Rushworth to Tatura. When I was in Rushworth, it just never occurred to me to have any complaints about the water pressure or any of the services there. So I was very surprised when I moved to Tatura to have a markedly increase in water pressure. And then sort of to skip forward to recent times, Tatura missed out on the big floods, but in the last few months, we've had a few very, very severe storms that have hit Tatura. And the last one dumped a whole lot of water right in my area, and it drained out into the gutter, into the streets, and it kept draining and draining and draining. And finally, it got through my thick skull that this was more than just draining of the storm water. So I finally phoned up GV Water and reported the drainage there, and they said, "Okay, we'll get somebody out there in a couple of weeks to look at it, and then decide what we're going to do about repairing it and everything." The next day, 2 trucks came out with 2 blokes, and they repaired the whole thing right there. And being the curious sort I am, I was there watching them and asked all sorts of questions. The only one they wouldn't answer is when I asked them what their names were, so I could feed back to the GV Water credit for them for the work they did. Their response was, "Oh, this is just our job." And so at the same time, I noticed a marked increase in the water pressure once that drain was fixed. This was all the next day, and they were finished. And so my rating of GV Water, including the years before when I was on the committee, the consultant committee, just the way things were done, 5 stars, no question. So, I mean, what you've been talking about is like up here. What I've been talking about is down here, and I thought I'd just contributed.
No, that's not at all. What you're talking about is really, really important. It's not down there at all.
Well, it's at the core level. Yes,
Yeah.
at the coal face, exactly.
Yeah, it's and that's the critical aspect in terms of servicing the community.
Yes,
And so
and
5-star rating is a fantastic rating for servicing the community.
in my experience, that's what they get.
No, thanks for sharing that. That's,
Thank you. Thank you very much for your contributions, Bill. Really appreciate you making the time to be with us and to share those experiences with us. It's very much valued. Is there anyone else that would like to make a contribution or ask a question? Online, you're welcome to stay there if you prefer, Bill, or in the room. I'll keep looking around. Not. I'll just make one other observation, if I think that might be appropriate, just in case there may be some misunderstanding. Anything that the Commission has said or Dean has said about challenging the business and so forth, please be aware that that Primo rating process that we're talking about is not a Primo rating of, it's not a rating of the business as a whole, it's a rating in relation to your price submission. So any markdown is not being given to Goulburn Valley Water as a business is we're talking about the primo rating in relation to a particular price submission, and that's the only
Well, I
issue
just
that we're
figured
talking.
that what I said would give a reflection on the opposite direction.
Yeah.
That's been discussed here.
Yeah.
Just to put things more in perspective.
Absolutely. And so it confirms it, but it does also highlight that what we're talking about here is not a reflection on Goulburn Valley Water as a business at all. It is only speaking about a particular price submission. So please bear that in mind. And that's really important in the context where Dean has indicated that the Commission is challenging the business. And we know that you had a leading rating. So this business has had a leading rating. And so, again, Dean acknowledged that this is an incentive process, an incentivizing process. We will work with you to try and incentivize you as best we can to get that performance. You have to have the ambition. As Dean said, your dance, you're leading. We'll try and follow and support you as best we can. So thank you very much for that. Are there any other... Hopefully it's given anyone else a chance to think about anything else they'd like to raise or ask questions about. If not, it doesn't have to be today at the forum. Can I invite people that are here to think about these three questions? What do you think of our draft decision on the prices proposed by Goulburn Valley Water? You might want to comment on the overall bills, proposed changes to the fixed and variable charges for prices, tenants, owners and non-residential customers. You might want to comment on the proposed new customer contributions, also known as developer charges. We heard a fair bit about the inflation issue, which we know the business will be addressing. These are all really important issues going to the pricing issues, and any feedback that you'd like to provide, we would dearly welcome. Second question I'd urge you to think about is, what do you think of our draft decision on Goulburn Valley Water's performance and their future service commitments? You saw the 4 promises to customers. Each water business is setting a set of outcomes for that customers will receive during that 5-year period. Again, we'd love to get your feedback in addition to Goulburn Valley Water's feedback in relation to that aspect of it. And the final thing is there anything else that you think that we haven't covered that we should be covering? So with that in mind, and before we finally close up, again, I'll come back to everybody before we do finally close up, but Dean, an opportunity to throw to you from the Commission side of things. Is there anything that you'd like to raise, to clarify or to pass on before we do close up?
I think everyone's covered it quite well. Thanks for the input today. It's been great. Thanks to the team as well at Goulburn Valley Water. You thanked us, but thank you too for I know it's a lot of work into these price submissions, and we recognise that, and with the floods and that, we know it had an impact on you. So it's the least we could do for you. But there's a little way to go yet, but we'll get there, and we know you're working actively on our draft decision, which is fantastic. I'll chat to you about the inflation numbers too, how they sort of flow through as well. The 7% gets added onto bills, but the long-term inflation numbers are a bit different. So we'll have a chat about that separately. That'll be updated in the next day or two. We'll send some advice out on that. Yeah. But thanks, Atesh. And thanks, Goulburn Valley team and everyone for coming.
Thanks, Dean. And likewise to Stephen, sure, if there's any final comments that either of you would like to make, I just wanted to give you the opportunity before we close up as well.
No, I think it's been a great session today, and a very sort of fitting end to a longish process. But as Dean said, we'll get to the finish line, and appreciate the support. And I'd like to thank our customers that are very much so for turning up today and sharing in the conversation and the contributions. It's been wonderful. So thanks, sharing.
Thank you. Well said. Well, if there's nothing else that anyone would like to raise, I think that does bring us towards the end of the forum. Between now and the 12th of May, when the submissions close, I encourage you and your teams to liaise with Dean and the Commission's water team for any input or engagement you'd like to do in terms of presenting it. You see the slide on the screen at the moment that sets out the address for the Engage Victoria website that I mentioned earlier. On behalf of the Commission and the Commission staff, I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to all of you for joining us today. Your acknowledgement of the Commission and its staff's work, Steve and Sarah, is really greatly appreciated as well. We are all here in one way or another to serve the community, and it is really terrific to see that that is able to move forward in that direction for the benefit of our communities. So thank you again. I know our team is looking forward to engaging with you further on all of these matters as we go forward. There's nothing further. I now close the forum. Thank you again.
Thank you.